Hello everyone, welcome to the Numbers Aren't Real podcast. I'm joined by a very special guest today as Professor Yiannis at the University of Glasgow. Teaches game theory and kind of specialises in game theory. I mean, do you want to give a kind of introduction? You'll do it best, I'm sure.
Yeah, so I'm a senior lecturer here at the Department of Computing Science at the University of Glasgow. I work generally in the field of algorithms and complexity. My work so far mostly focuses on what we call algorithmic game theory, which is a big field nowadays, but I use tools from optimization, design of algorithms, complexity, so we would say generally what we call algorithms and complexity and theoretical computer science. But my background is also mathematics, so I have studied mathematics in the past, so this is roughly where, at the intersection of economics, theoretical computer science, mathematics, somewhere there.
I mean, thank you for coming on this podcast. I was very happy that you agreed. I really enjoyed your teaching style during lectures. I thought it would be very interesting to have a conversation.
Thank you.
So shall we start with your kind of academic journey here? What was your undergrad, postgrad, or even before in high school? Or?
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. I don't know. I don't want to bore you. I'm old enough to. I can tell you. But roughly. So I was born in Greece, right? I went there high school and my undergrad there in mathematics. I also did my master's there, and we have a program which I don't know if it still exists, but it was pretty popular back then with people from the University of Athens that wanted to do this kind of stuff. So it was logic and theory of algorithms and computation. So I did this, and then I did my PhD in Oxford in algorithmic game theory with Professor Giannakopoulos there. And then I moved to Germany for my. I did 1 year postdoc in Liverpool, and then I moved to Germany in Munich for the rest of my postdocs. And then I got my first faculty position there in Germany, in Bavaria, in Nuremberg. And then I came back to the UK here at the University of Glasgow. So yeah, it's been a trip.
So you kind of started with the maths side and then moved towards computing. Is that correct? So how did you feel about that change?
Yeah, so I don't think I rationalized it too much back in the day. For some reason, so when I was doing my undergrad in mathematics, I vividly remember. So it was we had 3 specializations in the degree. So the mathematics department in Athens is very theoretical. And I clearly remember we didn't even have a project. We didn't have to write a thesis. And we had less courses than other schools, but I would say they were more intense maybe. So I don't know, 4 years. So 4 years is a common bachelor's degree in Greece. So it would be 4 years, 30 something courses, it was like that. So there were 3 directions. It was pure mathematics, applied mathematics, and education. So I did pure mathematics, and I remember this because there were very, very few people doing pure mathematics. So 10 out of 400, 500, right? Because you would take all this topology stuff, measure theory, everything. So I did this, but at the same time it was not a specialization, but it was called something like direction. And I also took all the computational courses. So I remember I took introduction to algorithms. Doing the CLRS book, but a different version, and like programming. So I took all these courses, and then some graduate courses, logic and stuff. So I was always, I think, interested in this aspect. And before that, in high school, I think I remember having a computer at home since a very early age. So I don't know, maybe 8, like this, and I remember doing afternoon classes at the school in programming, and I clearly remember that I was the youngest there. So I think there were people, but they were just finishing primary, so 3-4 years older than me. But I clearly remember being very excited about this. And of course you don't remember these times, but I remember. So we had MS-DOS, right? This was the operating system. So command line. This was before Windows, and having a programming language like GW Basic or Q Basic. It was part of having fun with computers. So there were some games, but even if you were 8 years old, I mean, you had access. And I remember that in the programming afternoon classes, we were actually doing programming, right? Like for loops and stuff like that. So I remember I was very, very excited about this. But I don't know exactly if I was excited, about the physicality of this, that you could program something and see something happening, or like the logical foundation of this. But on the other hand, I think this underlies the entire discussion, right? What is mathematics? What is computer science? So, So at the department, when I finished my pre-mathematics, and then I went into this master's because I really like this logic and all this stuff. Now, what happened is that I took some courses at the first years of my master's with certain professors that really inspired me and got me into this direction. But a funny story about this, and I say this is Ilias Koutsoupias, who was later my PhD supervisor in Oxford, was at that time at the University of Athens in my master's. And I remember the first class that I went, and it was, some kind of advanced algorithms. And I went there as a pure mathematician, and I don't know how it is here, but it was totally different to computer science. So in the computer science department, you would expect, if you were, a good student, excited, they would give you some paper or something, and you would read. So in the mathematics, we had zero connection with the professors. It was very formal, but still we did very deep mathematics, but we didn't have this kind of contact with research or anything. And I remember that I went to his class the first time. I hope he doesn't see this, but I tell him the story, and then I felt like, who is this guy? Why are they so sloppy, so informal? They're not doing proofs. It's like, the thing is, they were doing proofs and they were very formal, but for me, I was, so used into a certain way of doing mathematics, and then it took me a lot of time to understand that it takes effort to still be formal, but still work in this area. And then I got immediately hooked, and excited. Algorithms, online algorithms, game theory. So then I think I also liked the community. It was Greeks have a rather important community in theoretical computer science. So I think, there was a generation of professors that really inspired generation of students. So somehow I wanted to work on this, I think also. And still there was a very rigorous element to it. So I think this is what, So I didn't feel like really transitioning. I had to do some things from scratch because, for example, I never took a course in, computer architecture or something. And still, if I had to teach this now, I think I would have, probably I could do it, but it would not come naturally to me. While if you tell me, go and teach, calculus, I'll be super confident. So I guess this makes me more of a mathematician. But I never really saw it as transitioning or doing another field. I felt like, somehow these share a common background. I don't know if this makes sense now.
Do you think your mindset coming from maths changed your approach to the CS side of stuff, or was that pretty smooth? So I think this really helped me, and actually, even nowadays, right, when we look for good PhD students, usually for people that work in theory and what we do, the pool is mostly mathematics students, especially nowadays because the degrees are less and less, demanding in terms of mathematics and proofs. So I would say that the people that work in algorithms that I know in theoretical computer science, essentially they are mathematicians, and this is what I think they would call themselves and how they work. In the sense that, what would, an everyday job is actually proving things, and we like this. So. I actually remember in, I think your first lecture in second year in ALGS 2 or something, you had said that I consider myself a mathematician, not a computer scientist. So
were you there?
Yes.
Okay. Wow. Okay, I didn't know. I hope that someone. It's good that someone was paying attention.
What kind of student were you in your uni days, and has that changed, or do you see a change in that now, in how you learn and study?
So I remember, but the thing is, again, you should recall that I was in Greece, and there's a certain cultural, and there are different norms in different countries.
Absolutely.
So I don't know what kind of student I would have been if I was here. So I don't really. It's hard to be an undergrad in Greece, right?
Okay.
There's no planning. It's a bit. You will take the bus for 1.5 hours to go to the lecture, and then someone will say, okay, the professor didn't come in today, and I remember sometimes we lost the whole exam period for 6 months because there were strikes, and I think at some point I got really angry with this, and I didn't give any exams for half year, and then I give because in Greece you can, I don't know how it is nowadays, but you could give the exams as many times, and essentially you could be a student as many years. But what I liked is that at the same time in this chaotic thing, it gives the freedom to certain people who want to make the difference. Right? I mean, to some extent, less control or less organization. It also allows people who really are inspiring and they can make a difference to really do things. And that's why I feel that, I would not recommend someone studying in Greece in general. But on the other hand, if you are, if you are in one of these 10 out of 400 people that you really care, you could really get exposed to very advanced material and really, if you're passionate, you can really learn things. So, it was a little bit. I cannot really map it to the system here. Yes, and also the entrance system is different. So we have this brutal entry exam. That there is a countrywide. Essentially, you give an examination, and then everyone goes and submits a list of preferences before we know the entrance, and then the schools announce their thresholds. So essentially, you start scanning the list, and if you meet the threshold, you get in. So you don't apply.
It's a national list that you.
Yeah, it's a national list. Okay. It's this changes things. For me, it was not that, because I want to go to mathematics, and mathematics has this thing that it doesn't have a very high threshold. It usually gets 5 or 6 students that have very, very high threshold because they love mathematics, but it was not very competitive to get into mathematics. So but this changes the dynamics and how the schools work.
So I mean, you said you liked the logic side of stuff, and you've kind of spoken on this, but why game theory specifically? Why not other branches of formal logic, for example?
So I think actually at the beginning I wanted to do logic. So I think at the beginning I wanted to do a PhD in logic. And you never know how this would have worked. I think it was a combination of finding the actual people that inspire you. And I think, again, I don't know how's your experience and how it's nowadays, but you need to recall that back in the day, we had the internet, but it was barely, starting to begin. So having real hands-on interaction and people inspiring you was very important. So you didn't have access to all these, videos on YouTube about people talking. So for me, it was important to actually see people that, they were inspiring teachers, inspiring researchers, and somehow feel that, what if I could be a member of this community? So for me it was, I think, this combination of people, and also that at some point I think, although I didn't get too deep into this, is that I like the formalism, of this pure mathematics and stuff, but at some point I think it was becoming not too hard, because I think what I do now, I think it's hard, and it's unfortunately probably one of the reasons I have chosen it. But I think it was hard in a different way. Somehow I was losing, the intuition. I think I didn't have that much, and it's not a matter of if it's applied or not. I think I was losing. So I could still like the formalism, but I didn't have the immediate intuition, I think. And also it felt a little bit too deep into the rabbit hole, and then. So what I like about theoretical computer science and algorithms is that you can see the history, and the same people who 10 years, 20 years, 30 years were working in different things, now they're working in different things, but essentially they're using the same tools. So what I like about the area is that you're essentially doing, the mathematics you like, but depending on the things, you can really adapt and do something else. And this is while if you do, very abstract theoretical mathematics, I don't know how much flexibility you have.
I suppose theoretical CS is still a fairly young area compared to maths.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Again, it's a philosophical discussion. It depends. I mean, I don't know even if it's. I don't know if it's. Is it computer science? Is it mathematics? Is it? I don't know. So it depends where you are. So, for example, I would say that in a typical computer science department in the UK, if you are a theoretical computer scientist, especially if you're doing algorithms complexity and not like the more logic-based. I think you will feel a little bit, not belonging always in the department. You feel more like a mathematician.
Right.
In other departments, and historically, these departments have been together in many colleges and many. So, yeah, it's young, but on the other hand, is Alan Turing, is the classical purpose of Alan Turing computer science or logic? Is so someone could say just a continuation of very fundamental logic and mathematics. So if all these people were working now, what would they be doing? And who knows? I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely think there should be more of an interaction with the School of Maths and the School of Computer Science generally.
Yeah, I think that would be great. Yeah, I agree. I don't know how this works in practice, but in principle, I think that would be great.
Yeah.
I think students now can take some courses from, especially if they have the joint degree, but I would like to be a more streamlined process, courses from each department being offered at the other department, not as an external course, as a course that it is, you don't have to actually say, I'm selecting a different course. It is, I think that would be great.
And then what do you think about the other side of kind of teaching more of the basic computer science concepts to the School of Maths, kind of introducing basic programming to help that kind of research? Yeah,
and what I can tell you is that, again, I don't know, many of the things I say, they're from personal experience, and I have not done my undergrad in the UK. And, I have been in a couple of institutions, so I have been in Oxford and I have been here, but I vividly remember back in the day, and this is not, it's throughout the universities I've been in the world, that, for example, people in physics, they were extremely prominent in programming. I remember this clearly. So usually, if you wanted to get the best Unix people back in the day, or the department that had Wolfram's, mathematical licenses and stuff were the physicists, and they were extremely good in programming, right? So why? Because they had the need for this kind of infrastructure and the numerical methods and stuff. So it goes without saying that there is no way that you can avoid doing a degree without having exposure to programming, and not in any format, in a formal way. So first of all, I don't even consider the process of there's no way to be a mathematician without but this is fundamental. So it's not only being able to program in a way, because this is such a fundamental now aspect. It's like saying there's now 5-year-olds that have certain skills that we wouldn't imagine back in the day, but now they're not part of the curriculum. You just learn them because you happen to be. So I would imagine programming, even if we didn't teach it formally in mathematics, I would imagine that mathematicians would somehow, in a sense, I don't know if what I mean is that programming could be a part of every single course that you teach in mathematics. On the other hand, if you do it in a systematic way from the computer science department, you can do something else, right, which is important. So not just learn it as a tool or as do this added value that university education does, apart from just going online and doing some things. And similarly, the other way, for example, something that it really struck me, I don't know if it has changed, I think not. You know better. I think that students in computing science here, formally, they don't have to take a mathematics course. So it's not mandatory.
It's not mandatory.
This is beyond my, I cannot. I mean, most of the students take.
Yes, it's highly recommended. But
but what does it mean? I mean, it's. I mean, I would say it's unbelievable because of my background. But even if you want to see it more applied, then I guess now we have the selling point. Everyone wants to do big data, AI, machine learning. How do you do this? I mean, because if you teach this and you want to do whatever linear algebra, what do you say to the students? You need to offer something that. What do you say? Okay, now we're going to design a serious machine learning course, but we don't assume you have knowledge of linear algebra.
I fully agree. I think first year and at least second year maths should be compulsory, but I feel like the vast majority of my fellow students would kind of hate me for saying this.
Yeah, but it's just, I don't know, student satisfaction is important, but you have to define it. So I don't know who defines student satisfaction, right? So what makes someone happy? I mean, like, I'm not saying we should force things to people, but on the other hand, I don't think you should ask in such a narrow way if students are happy, because really, and I'm not saying this in an offensive way, is that the reason that students come here is because they don't fully know what is happening, right? And they want to learn.
Yeah, absolutely.
So somehow we need to help them in this. And and in my experience, also something else. I think we underestimate students. We treat them, I think this is a very patronizing way of. In my experience, whenever I had genuine discussions with students, I think students are way more ambitious than we think. They can take more, they want to learn more, and somehow we have numbed them a little bit with this approach. So I think that if we just say we do mathematics, for a couple of first year, things are going to be a little bit difficult, but then everyone would say, this is. So I think it could be, and actually I think it would be a better integration. For example, even something more radical, like why not computer scientists doing the discrete mathematics course in the mathematics department?
Yeah, definitely.
Right, and similarly, we can have people from the mathematics department doing series probability, other things, and I think also research-wise, it will be. In my mind, we could even be the same school in a way. Right? I don't think. But again, I don't define the field, and there are other people. So I want to be clear. Everything I say is my personal opinion, right? And whatever I say, it will have zero impact in the in the trajectory of how the university is designed. But my opinion is that somehow the departments in computer science, and generally in the UK, they are designed a little bit more like what we would traditionally call engineering.
Right.
Which I don't want to say it's bad, but it is what it is, and it's something different. And I think that this is the added value of so many of the problems that modern academia is facing. I think it's because we have lost a little bit the identity and the added value that we bring to our degrees. So if we in another way, I think that many universities will pride on the sense like, we teach students how to get a job or skills to get a job. But somehow this is the selling point. But I think this is a secondary thought. I think we should teach students how they think, how they develop it, and then of course if they are able to think creatively, they will also find a job.
Right.
But I think that if you start with such a narrow, very measurable way of what we're doing, then you risk a lot. Because for example, if you only start from this goal and say, okay, we need to find a job, then if you have such a mechanized, such a very structured way of doing things, if something appears, or the circumstances or the technology that can do this mechanical thing better than you, then you have lost your existence, right? And I think that people will forever value, this added experience about the learning, how we think. And I think this is something valuable in higher education. We should protect this. We should. And I think by talking to students again, I think students want this and they appreciate this. We just pretend that we know better than they do, and I think we need to talk to them at some point.
Do you think we are seeing this introduction of some mechanized way to get students jobs that does it better than universities? These days. Yeah,
I mean, this has started a few years back, but I think now there is this attitude that university is a waste of time, and it is, but we need to define what is waste of time and what is the goal, okay? And this famous person didn't study, didn't get a degree, and they succeed, of course, that's fine. But what does it prove? And nothing. And again, I don't think we should compete in this way. And I think that universities would not have been created in the first place if we're thinking in these ways. The universities were created in a totally different way, and somehow we need to historically respect this. Otherwise, we're especially in such a historic institution like here. Okay, we need to look back and see what we can offer, what experience we can offer that cannot be substituted or simulated. And it's not only practically these things. It's it's this mentality that if we always create this mentality that nothing is important, everything is judged by measurable things. And okay, so you went in this university, but at the end of the day, I want to see what is your salary or how fast you can program or something.
Right.
Yeah, okay, this is one way to evaluate things, and fine. But I claim that this is a very, very narrow way to to evaluate your experience in a university.
Yeah.
But anyway, you're a student, so probably you know more about this.
Oh.
You can ask me more about this. I don't know. I'm just guessing.
I mean, yeah, that does seem about right. I kind of agree. I suppose it's harder for universities to pivot to this way because it's not easily measurable. I guess that's the main reason that.
Yeah, but this obsession with measurable things. I mean, I get it. This is a very UK thing. To some extent, I like it because vagueness also creates. But it's. I mean, I think this is a management thing. Is that if you cannot measure something, it's a problem.
Yeah.
And I think this starts fundamentally in a different point. I think this has to do, and coming from Greece, I have seen this a lot. It's this kind of diffusion of responsibility. It's like I think we have created a lot of bureaucratic structures and processes. So somehow, if you think about, many times you don't really recall the person who did something, or you talk about the institutions and the processes. So, for example, you took a course at the university, and you don't really feel that this was taught by the lecturer. You may not remember, but you remember the process. You remember how it was assessed, the tick boxes, the ILOs, what you have to do. And the university wants this. Why? Because, teaching is a little bit, it's a very weird experience. You have to have a certain connection. And it's not measurable. But yeah, this is good. But also, let's say something doesn't go well. If you have not mechanized everything and you have not narrowed it, okay, who's responsible? How do you do it? Well, now if you have processes and somehow there's an automated process, we say, okay, we did everything we had, so we did everything, so it should be good. Right? So if you go and you say, yeah, for some reason I don't like this course or something, then the way usually this is approached is, okay, what do you mean? What did go wrong? And then if it's something fuzzy, you cannot really explain it. Yeah. And you cannot say, I didn't like the lecturer, because then they will tell you, okay, what exactly they did this and this and this, so they did it.
Yeah.
And somehow it's, it's totally fine. I mean, I remember, we had people liking some courses, other courses, lecturers that were engaged, and this was fine. I mean, this was somehow, but now somehow we have compressed everything in some kind of very narrow middle ground, so we cannot really diverge either negative or positive. And I hope this changes, but I'm not very optimistic about this. Yeah.
How would it change? What kind of changes do you think are necessary?
Yeah, I think the whole UK academic market needs to, it would, if we want to change, it would need to change, and I don't see how this can be done. I think universities are managed like corporations, but on the other hand, they don't have the freedom that the regular, corporation would have. So they are trying to juggle this academic duty, whatever, with the corporate structure and management, and I think it's very. And we have a lot of exposure in international students and tuition, and this is. Imagine being romantic and want to say, okay, I feel like everyone needs to learn, topology, this, and then, how do you measure this, and what does the market want? It's a little bit, Although I really honestly believe that, even from the market perspective, I think that if we had more freedom, it might have been more effective, because. Narrowly you say, okay, why would we do these abstract and difficult courses, and why we do this, and everything needs to be measured because it's better as a product. But I honestly think that if we allow the system a little bit freedom and then to stabilize, I think that in the end of the day, even the market is going to appreciate this. And you can see this from American universities, right?
So freedom, what would freedom involve?
Like, for example, you have more freedom about how you teach a course.
Right.
What topic you teach, how you evaluate the course, the degrees, the credit, like somehow be able to get out of the person who's teaching the added value that they bring to the course, right? You would go to MIT and you will say, I learned algebra with this person, okay? Yeah. Usually, I would say here you will say I did some course at this,
I see, yeah.
And the funny thing is that in MIT people will still pay tuition to go there, right? And they will not usually say, I mean, maybe nowadays, so I don't know exactly because I have lost some contact back with the market. They will say, they expect to get challenged and they expect to go beyond that. So I think it's a different, Anyway, I don't want to depress the discussion. But definitely rapid changes are coming, and we need to see. I would hate to see, because UK academia historically has played a super important role, right? I also remember from Greece, most of my friends that would go abroad, the UK was the standard destination. So historic institutions, I think they have a historical duty to be present.
Do you think that role has kind of shifted towards America now, or even Europe?
So America has other problems now. And actually very, very serious. So again, I don't know. It used to be that the US was the standard destination for high quality academic research, but I think for various political reasons that all this is changing, and I'm more optimistic about Europe because of the system of tuition and the way academia has been developed there. But unavoidably somehow we need to find a common model and a common ground. I mean, this is not sustainable, and we'll see. I don't know.
Fair enough. Moving back to kind of you said you were inspired by a lot of professors and stuff. What kind of stuff did they inspire you to do?
So there were not a lot because again, as I said, the University of Athens had some great people that usually have done the PhDs abroad and they would come back. So for example, in my transition after the mathematics, what I really liked during this masters, that most of my courses were in the computer science department that was nearby. So there was a joint master. So I really liked this more direct connection with research, whatever this means, so people would actually give you a paper that was more accessible, and then there was still rigorousness, but you could feel like engaged. There were open questions, and for example, there were courses that would be evaluated in the following way: that there was you were given some papers, you would present the paper. This was totally fine. For example, this would be hard to implement here in a very structured way. And then you would given a take-home exam that you would have a week to write, but again it was before LLMs and before internet, right? Essentially, a little bit. And then you would submit it, and then the professor could call you to their office and ask you questions on and I found this great because and I vividly remember that once giving some exercise, a take-home exam to Elias, was my PhD advisor later in Oxford, and actually I have spent 5 days trying to solve this exercise and I couldn't solve it, and I said, okay, what's the answer? And he said, I don't know, this is an open problem.
Oh wow, okay.
But it was a process of trying to, this was great. So, or I remember another great, I don't know where he is now. So we had Yiannis Giannakopoulos, who's a great logician. He was in UCLA, but he was close to retirement back then, and he was doing one semester in Athens, one semester in Los Angeles, and he was teaching recursion and computation in not Turing machines and stuff, but in a more classical way of computation, and also set theory, who's a legend. And I remember that he would give take-home exercises every week that did not count to the final grade. And I remember not sleeping 3 or 4 days every week to do the exercises, and typeset them greatly, in LaTeX, and it was not like now LaTeX, by the way. It was so, and I don't know. I'm trying to think whether this could be done now. Whether if I was a student now, I would be motivated to do this because we have so many distractions, and so somehow being to Greece might also have helped me. Because I didn't have many other courses, I could somehow get obsessed with this. There was a lot of freedom in how we attend courses. So, but I really remember it was the real thrill about solving a very hard exercise. This was great, and then going and asking. This was very fun, and of course high school teachers also. Yeah, we should know. I think, I don't know about your case, but I think in my case, definitely my mathematics teacher in high school had a great influence on me. Both as a person, I think, you always connect somehow to people in a way. I think he was inspiring as a person. He also showed me a little bit what's beyond, I think, he gave me some, I was a little bit exposed in more advanced material. Sometimes because I was getting a little bit bored, they would put me in a different desk, they would give me some other exercises, or and then I think it was inspiring, somehow you felt that this person is somehow different and he's doing this thing, so I want to be like that. And, they would I think the personal experience, I think, makes a lot of difference. I don't know if it is like that now, because people are exposed to a lot of material and they can just ask an LLM about something. But
I think the problem now is also I feel like unfortunately lecturers can't give that personal experience since there's so many students. Purely because like class sizes, I feel like.
Well, I can tell you about this, that class sizes in the University of Athens were huge.
Okay.
So I definitely remember, so I was a teaching assistant for Elias in Athens, and I remember he went to go in a conference and I had to teach mathematics for computer scientists. And actually it was a lecture that we were doing, I don't know if it was the halting problem or that the real numbers are accountable, because they both use, Cantor's diagonalization. So I remember doing this in the world. There was like a huge amphitheater, 300. And you knew that 5-10 people at most are interested and excited about this.
Right.
But the people would come after, they will ask you things.
Yeah.
And you could change the pace. You could, for example, something here that is, I don't know if you are aware of this, but, and I think this is done mostly for reasons of quality assurance, but we have to finalize our exams before the start of the term.
Yes.
And I see the point into this because they're also vetted, but let's say I have a cohort that somehow, I would do this in other countries, in Germany when I was teaching, and in Greece. You may, maybe you have a different cohort, maybe you want to emphasize something, maybe you do something more, you cannot do that. So everything is very narrow, whatever you do has to serve a purpose here and map to something. In my class I try to do something which might be considered hard or outside of the box, I don't know, but still I do it in a structured way. I could not do something that it's obviously hard or very romantic, because there's always going to be something that's going to complain, and then the school will say, how do you map this in the intended learning outcomes, and what do you do? So even if I cannot do spontaneous things like that. But I think high school was important, and I think, probably in your case, I would imagine, right? Like you also had some teachers in high school.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Right?
Same. Like I had a maths teacher that I really, I liked his teaching. I liked his the personal aspect as well. It was very, very nice.
Yeah. So I think all of us have this kind of, sometimes we forget these people, but I think these people should be proud, and we owe them.
Yeah.
And this is an important aspect of teaching that I think people undervalued it a lot nowadays. It's that you need to get, everything is very mechanized again, as I said. Even teaching now, there are even degrees about teaching. That they teach you how to teach, and you have to. Thankfully, I didn't have to do this because I came later in my career and I negotiated and I didn't do this. But you have to. And I can tell you for a fact, many people who have done this, I don't think they are better teachers. Okay. So to some extent, I think you can learn how to be a decent teacher, but I don't think you can learn how to be a great teacher.
Right.
I also don't think it's a talent or something like metaphysical. I just think it's a matter of you somehow having a recollection about how you learn certain things, and also trying to honestly simulate the experience of learning with the students. Right? It's like sometimes we forget how to do that, and I think if you're excited about the topic and you try to go through them somehow, share the excitement as you learn this somehow for the first time. I think honesty, I think, is a very important component in teaching. So, but we somehow don't reinforce this approach. I mean, no one will go and say, you have to be an honest teacher. You have to be, because this is not measurable again.
Right.
It's so. But I think this is important, and I think if maybe research-wise we don't have a lot of impact. Maybe we do. Who knows? But I think what we definitely have to have an impact. And again, the word impact is defined weirdly in modern academia. So, but even so slightly, how many lives of our students in some way we have affected? Okay, not dramatically, but 10 years from now, are you going to remember something? Maybe not a concept, but a certain experience. As I say, I remember the class of this person who excited me about this. I think this is amazing. I mean, if I was a teacher and someone was saying about me 10 years from now, I would feel very proud, because I made an impact on someone's life. And I think this is something that, it's a very rewarding experience, and it's the reason why we're in academia. Yeah. And I think we should cherish this more.
Have you always had this kind of philosophy about teaching, or have you developed it over the years? This kind of like being honest and sharing your experience of learning it.
Yeah, I'm an old person, so no. I think somehow I was always interested in teaching conceptually, and another thing is that in Greece, something which is also very popular is we have a lot of private tutoring in Greece. I think here it's not common, but because we have very difficult exams, usually good starting undergrad students would offer private tutors to high school students. I was not fully exposed to this because I was one of the few students that I didn't do private tutoring when I was in high school, because I really thought it's so much time. I couldn't do it. But I prefer working on my own, and I think I did fine. So I didn't have the need of it, but it was socially expected. Everyone was doing it.
Right.
So I was not directly exposed to this. But maybe this also gave me, I had a lot of interaction with myself about how I learn things. I was very, persistent, and I was studying a lot on my own. And I think this helped me somehow have I don't know if this makes sense, but somehow I had a living experience of the learning process. I was not like, somehow someone will teach me always how to do it, and I just have to memorize. Somehow I had a book, and so there were very popular, some books that had extra exercises, and you were expected to study them. So I would take these books and I was trying to learn this material instead of going to someone. And I think this helped me a lot with how I learn. So then when I had to do the teaching, I somehow I will sometimes persist and discuss difficulties that I felt that a student could face. Which is not always the best teaching method. I mean, I don't know, maybe you recall from my class, I'm always worried that perhaps I overemphasize a detail too much, or I talk too much, like I'm doing now. And sometimes when I see the teaching style of other people that are, sometimes I appreciate this because they leave a lot of the details, and then you have some responsibility to learn about them. But for me, it's a little bit, if I think about something that is exciting and maybe an aspect that I know, I mean, I feel that I cannot not discuss it, and so somehow this is the kind of honesty I'm talking about. So yeah, to summarize, there are a lot of courses about teaching, and even as a PhD student here, you get exposed, to how you write academic papers. What is research, what is teaching, but I don't want to be dismissive, and I'm not this kind of person. Everything is valuable to some sense if it works for you, but there are certain things that cannot be taught, at least in the way that we are teaching them. Because teaching is also interacting, and having a good supervisor is teaching. It's not, they never taught you how to write a paper or how to be an academic, but it's teaching in the in a more ancient philosophy sense. It's like you learn by a person, by every day, right? So you have a very good connection with your supervisor, and you will go and have coffee with them, you have dinner, you see how they write their papers, how they informally talk to their colleagues. You learn about academia, and that's the way that's how all of us learned. So I guess this is also how I learned about teaching, like by my own experience and people that I liked how they taught me. And then I felt that, if I get the feeling that this is not working, I will try to recalibrate.
Yeah.
But usually, in my experience, if you are honest and excited about your topic, I think students appreciate this. And I think many times, again, I've said this before, I think this is important. I think we don't appreciate how we are very dismissive with students. We say, okay, students, they don't understand anymore, they don't learn mathematics, but I think we don't really give them the opportunity to engage properly with this. We don't treat them as, we treat them as children. We don't treat them as, I think this has changed a lot in the last 50 years or so. We don't treat them like grown-ups that come and they are responsible about, they need to engage and take ownership of the learning process.
Yeah.
The moment you make everything, we feel that we are respecting them more and more, making their life easier. We thought, we have a net that supposedly supports. And we should support the students. And we should have common sense support. But many times we do everything so structured and so simple that students don't have ownership of the learning process anymore. And if you don't get engaged, and have ownership of this, like, look, I want to learn this. It's my duty to learn this. But of course also the teacher needs to be there. And, I think we need to cultivate this more. And somehow it's a vision, it's like, then also teachers get depressed. Academia has a side that you don't see as a teacher, as a student. It's like everyone feels that, the majority of our time is on teaching or research, that we should, but that's not the case. So, the way we work, and it's a lot of corporate management happening. It's like you will be surprised that if you would go to most people and you will say you don't teach for a year, they will be very, very happy.
Okay.
Because everyone is so stressed, so much time and so much bureaucracy and other stuff.
Yeah.
So everyone just want to tick the box and say, I did this. So this is a problem. While back in the day it was an essential part. Even the most famous people in science that you remember, they thought it's part of their process. Yeah. I don't know if they were great teachers. Some of them were, but whatever, they had their styles, and everyone learned from this.
Yeah. Has there been any teaching style you've seen from someone else that you've thought that's a really great thing to do, and you've kind of tried to adapt that? Yeah,
for example, I think to some extent my mathematics teachers in Athens and Yiannis Giannakopoulos that I told you, who was a musician, even when he was close to retirement, right, he would do, and this was a serious course, right, like we would do Gödel's incompleteness theorem, the proof, everything, okay. He would do everything, the proofs completely on the whiteboard with chalk,
Wow.
Sometimes he will stop if he, he would honestly discuss this, he would make a small mistake, he would go back, this was really inspiring. I mean, now it seems trivial, but not. I mean, if you see how now people teach, they go, they click their slides, we actually have to use their slides, right? And most of the time, if you say, it takes a lot of work to be engaged with the material and be able to do it in such a way.
Yeah.
Because dynamic, you change something, you do something, you can go and write.
Yeah.
And it's more work, but imagine the engagement and the,
Absolutely.
I don't know if, it seems trivial now, I feel like an old guy, talking about it.
I think that makes sense.
Maybe it doesn't, I don't know, and maybe, again, they will tell you from the university that, students prefer the slides, this is how they, but again, I don't know, do they, have we really talked to them? I don't know.
I mean, it's a big difference I see between maths and computing lectures.
Yeah.
In maths lectures, the vast majority of them, remember, is just doing pretty much going through the lecture notes, but live and going through the proofs and theorems and stuff. So, I think that was very helpful because, going through especially difficult proofs, kind of stepping through and having the opportunity to ask questions about the proof step, for example, I think that was really helpful in understanding.
Something else that I've seen and I like, and it was, for example, my PhD supervisor when he was in Athens, it was very interesting for me and I think it helped me, but I don't think I can do this kind of teaching. I don't know, I feel, somehow it messes up with my, principles of I don't know, it's like he would somehow do the proofs rigorously enough but with omitting the unnecessary details. But what is the unnecessary detail? But then he also had the luxury of having a strong core of students, because the students would take these courses. In Athens, there were like 10 students who were, and this is a great class if you can do it. Like you can really teach an advanced graduate course like that, and it's really great. So if you can, but I think you can do this in advanced and more flexible courses. So, for example, in Germany we would do seminar courses. So you had the option, if you were a professor, to offer a seminar course that you had a lot of flexibility in format. For example, you could either give a series of papers that the students would take the papers and then present them and discuss them, or you can give a classic book. Just a student takes a chapter and they discuss it a little bit, and there you have a lot of flexibility to spontaneously do some things. And somehow I like this because it gave you the more humane side of teaching. Like professors were also researchers that are humbled by the material. They can do mistakes, they don't know all the answers, they don't remember a detail. I think this is also great. Yeah, I don't know. I don't have any recipes, unfortunately. And I think I should have, but I don't. Maybe it's a disadvantage, but I never really. I mean, it sounds weird because I can understand that people feel that I'm excited about my teaching, and I really spend time with my teaching and stuff. But I never really think about it like, to be a good teacher, I have to do this and this and this. I have this. Sometimes I try, some like the day before not to be thinking anything, and sometimes I even I want to, open the material and be spontaneously into this. And many times I diverge in the lecture and say about things in the moment, which could be distracting for many students, because they have been used in a different. But I think this spontaneous connection with the material, on average, I think it's beneficial for the student. I don't know. But of course, you need to have structure to help the students who may not work like that. So, for example, that's why I have I try to have lecture notes and not just only slides, and have the material clearly, so that there is no ambiguity. What we expect from a student. Like I don't want to give a 500-page textbook and say, that's the material.
I mean, in the same way, teaching style and stuff differs. You talked about the different types of ways that courses were examined. Like you had the take-home, problem sheets. You had like vivas or oral exams. What kind of stuff did you like or did you prefer?
So I really like the vivas, and when I was in Germany, most professors would do a viva if the class was up to 15, 20, but I would do a viva even if the class was 30. It would take a little bit more. And the idea was you usually need to have another person in the room, but usually this would be a PhD student of yours. In Germany, PhD students are not formal students; they are employees. So somehow, they they're like research, so they could serve as employees for the university. Just to ensure the quality of the. And this was great because there are things. I mean, I understand again the formality and the ticking boxes and measuring everything, but if you have connection with the students and the material, in 5 minutes you can understand what's happening. Okay, and then of course you can help also the student you can really help them. You can. And then they go out for 2 minutes, you discuss and you announce the grade, and they tell you what's happening. Are you? And then that's it will take you more days, and it's exhausting after a while. But I think it's a really good way. Okay, you cannot do this in a first or second year course in analysis, and you shouldn't do it probably because depending on your personality, I don't know if you want to, but. I think it's there's a valuable thing there, this kind of connection, and even exams. I think we should have, for example, even proper written exams. I think we should have more flexibility about the duration. A little bit how here we have very strong requirements about even how many questions we put, how much time, the subsectioning, and another thing I don't like. I don't know if it's a UK thing, is that. Although we try to offer to the students feedback and stuff, then we have this rule that essentially students are not allowed to see their exams because it's a matter of academic judgment. In Greece and in Germany, it would be one day, I would say, everyone comes in my office during these hours to see your papers. And my experience, in Greece, usually people will complain, they won't. But in Germany, most people will just sit there and say, yeah, okay, fair enough. They will never try to extract a higher grade. They honestly wanted to see what happened.
Yeah.
So instead of me writing a generic long feedback and trying to do this, why don't, because you saw I don't know if you see the feedback by our exams in general. We write some report, and if you want really, you can be thorough, and I try to be as thorough as possible, okay? But still, I don't think this really communicates to the student exactly how they did. I would be totally fine to come in my office, see your exam for 10 minutes, and then, but the problem is that I should be there and I should be ready to discuss, right? This is what but for me that would be great. I mean, I'm happy to do that.
I think maybe I'm speaking for the minority here, but I think oral exams would be preferred opposed to just written ones. I think it's easier to show my understanding in an oral one than a written one. So
I think especially now with LLMs, it's but the problem is again, how do you standardize the things? And I think the British have, an issue with how things could be managed. Rooms, we don't have a lot of space. I mean, I'm not pretending that there are no practical issues. There are practical issues, and maybe, out of the 60 professors, 3 of them are terrible, and this will be terrible for the students.
Right.
But this was always the case historically. Now, the argument is, and this is not an argument for the exam, this is, I think, an argument for everything I see, not even academia, I think, this is a society issue. What are we trying to optimize here? Is your goal for a successful social cohesion, or how we don't think is that, okay, let's make sure that we don't have these bad outliers. Is this so a successful academic institution is the one that is trying to optimize the worst case as much as possible?
Yeah.
Is this a good objective? Because if while you do that you bring everything down, and you compress everything at the low quality, do we care about this? I think there is a wisdom in a discipline, and this is not because I'm doing game theory, but I think there is a wisdom in a distributed system, and I think students are clever, and like mathematically and computationally, if you see, I don't think our theorems, model real life, but if you want to be philosophical about this, how can we believe that we can centrally optimize such a complicated system? It's just impossible. I mean, apart from the theorems that show it's impossible, but how can we pretend that we know what is best for every single student with every single different background? It's impossible to centralize it. So to some extent we should ensure decency and quality, and this is common sense, by the way. We don't need to have regulation about this. If you're a terrible person and you don't respect your students, you should just get fired. It's simple, right? Yeah. But there's a problem. Who's going to fire you?
Right.
But if you have a process, no one needs to fire you, because you just you see the problem? So I think everyone needs to take responsibility. And this would allow people to really show their abilities and give a better experience to students and everything, And try, we can lift everyone up. Yeah, there are going to be some bad cases, but you know what? Students in 4 or 5 years, they will not take their courses. If they and the system will somehow stabilize. So I think we need to be a little bit more, trust our students a little bit more, trust the system. We don't need. I understand we need to justify the management. So somehow we need to feel like, we have the need for. But I think we can, academics can handle it, and I think institutions should be managed by academics.
Do you think academia isn't kind of a local maxima where we're scared to move towards possibly higher one, where this one's kind of working now?
Yes, but I don't think it's a maximum, right? It's a local. It's whatever. It's a local something. It's a stable point. I don't know. It's an option. The thing is, there needs to be reason to do something, because everyone is overworked. Everyone is tired. Right. Why? And you can see this if you go in a meeting, and you discuss even slightly radical ideas. They don't say this to you, but they're a little bit. Why? Also, there's a structure, so there's a huge structure, right, of management and stuff, and somehow this needs to be justified, okay? So, but we need to move fast, because things are moving fast outside of us.
Absolutely.
And we're going to be obsolete, soon. And the funny thing is that then we will start saying, but why this happened? And
You'd said previously that you wanted to teach a kind of philosophy of maths course. What sort of stuff would that include?
Yeah, I said this. We discussed this informally. Yeah, I don't think it's feasible to do it here,
Right.
for example. But I was thinking of doing this in Germany, for example, when I was at the mathematics department, but I was doing complexity there, game theory. Yeah, again, this is huge, right? It depends on the background of the students, on the department, or everything. But yeah, anyway, I will keep the short version. I don't know. I will say something. So, in general, things that you could, before I go to the technical stuff, but things that you could study would be, and maybe you've seen things about this in the mathematics department here. I don't know what was your exposure in courses, but things. So fundamental things in the philosophy of mathematics would be, what is the nature of mathematical objects? It sounds a little bit cheesy. I don't want to. I mean, I want to clarify. I'm not one of these people who put more emphasis into the philosophy of mathematics than the actual living the practice of mathematics. But I think that some things are important because many times we separate. We feel like we're I'm a mathematician, I don't care about these things. But sometimes these are interesting because they really shape the way you think.
Yeah.
So for example, what is the nature of objects in mathematics? Right? What do they exist? Do we discover them? Do we create them? What is really a number? What is really a graph? And there are people who have studied these things, right?
Yeah.
It's not, for example, the most common approach it's Platonism, like somehow mathematical objects really exist and they have meaning on their own, and somehow we just discover them.
Yeah.
And then very, very importantly for me, because I like these things, but I think especially for also computer scientists and mathematicians, is what is the nature of truth? What is a true statement? What proving means? Well, we all feel, but there are models about this. There is a lot of work into this, and touching, and again related. What does proving means in a computational way? What can we prove? Okay, not what proof is, but what can be proved. And even the phrase "can be proved," what does it mean? So the thing is, you can discuss this informally. Then, depending on you are, you can go a little bit deeper, right? Okay, I don't expect people to do, all Gödel's proofs or all Turing machines and stuff and all this. And also because it's in a mathematics department or computer science, I also don't want people to spend 6 weeks discussing abstractly about things. Right. So it's good. But I think that a student after 3-4 years, we can really relate this, right? So I don't know what did you do? For example, have you done axioms of elementary arithmetic or this stuff? No, right? Or set theory?
Unfortunately, there's not a set theory course here. But I mean, there's other stuff that.
Yeah, but for example, all this that I said, all these things, I don't know how much time we have. I mean, I can give you examples, but it is that all these things you can teach them by simple examples, right? You can really relate. And other things in the philosophy, especially if we're in computer science, what is the nature of randomness? What is random? Does randomness exist? What does it mean? What is random, right? Do we really have random things? When you use a Python function to give you a random number, what does it do? Pseudo randomness and all these things.
Yeah.
So these are the kind of stuff, and there are other more, esoteric things. But I think already, since we don't have a lot of time, but all these things could be. And I don't know. I mean, you as a mathematician, have you been at least? Did you have the chance, even at a simple course, or just to be mildly exposed to these things, like something like? So for example, no one have told you about non-standard models of arithmetic, or
even formally we haven't covered like the piano axioms or anything like that. We haven't.
Or like Euclidean geometry, if you drop the the postulate, this thing about like if you have a straight line and you have a point outside it, there is a unique line which is parallel to it, and if you drop these are different geometries.
We haven't covered this at least. Not in the courses I've taken, although I've tried to take very pure courses, so we haven't covered.
Okay, so actually we need to have a course, right? Because, I mean, and I think that will be. Yeah, for some reason I feel in Athens we had this. Actually, in Athens at the university there was a department. I was not in this department. There was a department of the philosophy of science.
Wow. Okay.
And they would do not only mathematics, and the person who taught the philosophy of mathematics was from that department. But he was a theorist logician, like model theory, like serious stuff. So, but he was still, I think I was dismissive, especially in my high school years. I remember this clearly, and I'm not proud of it, by the way. I remember I was a lot like, literature and history and ancient Greek, because we had to do ancient Greek and stuff. I mean, I was good at them and I respect them. I was not, but for some reason I thought, this is soft topics, people who care do the other stuff. And I kind of regret it in the sense, or maybe I'm becoming softer because I'm older, but I think that when I went for my PhD and I was in Oxford and I have access to, to the colleges and the libraries and I started reading more stuff, I think, there is a reason why very, very famous mathematicians discussed about these things. So if you do it in a very systematic and deep way, I think, there are important things there. Now, whether this is interesting, again, I mean, some would say, come on, Yiannis, we are in the area of, AI, what do we care about, these things in philosophy of mathematics? And I get it, but then, why do you care about a nice painting? What do you care about art? What do you care about? And the answer is the human condition. I mean, absolutely. That's, we care about this. Why? Because, we this is what makes us human. This is part of our minds. So some people would appreciate this, some not, and we don't have to force this to everyone. But I think the students should have the option, even if they don't, somehow we, for example, if we had the proper complexity course, because it's unavoidable when you teach a little bit Turing machine and stuff. An excited lecturer will tell you some things about what is decidable. Have you done decidable? No, right? What is, all these things, and this is super fun. I mean, I remember. Imagine the first time someone explains to you Gödel's incompleteness theorem and says, okay, so there are true propositions that provably cannot be proved. What is this? Like the philosophical implications are amazing. And what does it mean? How this? And this is great. I think we need to. Anyway, I can talk about this for a long time, but it's. That would be great. But I'm thinking about the bureaucratic. How do you do that? I think it's impossible to do it.
What would be the main issue?
If you want to do it in computer science, they will never let you because it's very, very romantic. And it's not measurable enough. If you do it in mathematics, you will be from another department. I don't think this is even possible. And even from a mathematician, they will say, we have very few courses. We don't have rooms. We don't have space in the curriculum. What is this? Unless you do it, and then 30 or 40 people start taking it, and then, So I found it more feasible at the philosophy department. But I don't know how's the department here, but in very good universities, the philosophy departments would do philosophy of mathematics. And it's amazing that students who do, this kind of sciences, they would take a course like this, and would be able to approach it. Otherwise, we can just do it, in different courses somehow. And another interesting course related, again, I'm not suggesting this, would be history of mathematics. I don't know if you had a course like this. This is something, and that's why, I don't know if you've seen, I try to my lectures always to, talk about people.
Absolutely.
And a little bit, and I give some extra references. I have this webpage, I don't know if anyone reads them, but, it's very important, like, the historical thing, the people behind it, the connections, we need to humanize a little bit the topic, right? Somehow mathematics feels like a collection of symbols and theories, but how were these developed? Like currently, what we develop, the papers we write, at some point they will be part of something. How was this developed? Think about it. There were people 100 years ago, they were doing some of the things somewhere in a room, in a desk. They were discussing, they were competing with the other, they were traveling, This is amazing. This is somehow we forget this is a creation of humans. We need to be proud of this. We need to emphasize this. It's part of the learning process. But it's also a lot of work to teach this. So I think because there's no there are textbooks, but it would be how do you assess this?
I guess these are more maybe on the side of humanities courses. The more fitting towards there.
But the Viva, an oral exam would be good for this.
Absolutely.
Because you could dynamically say about this school of thought, and then you say an example, and then logical formula, and then you can do things. Yeah. Great, yeah.
Coming from like an outside perspective into maths, yes, game theory, maths has a very negative reputation, I feel. It's seen as like a very scary subject. Why do you think that is? What do you think people misunderstand about this field?
Yeah, clearly they do, right? I mean, we should not. Although, at the same time, I get the feeling by the average person, I don't know what this means, but somehow at the same time they respect to some extent the people who do this, maybe late, but I could try to rationalize this and say many theories, but the theory I had when I was a student, which might be wrong, and probably it is, but I always had the feeling that it's not. I'm not a great believer in inherent talent. Although I have witnessed this. I mean, there are people who you can. So I don't want to dismiss it. But on the other hand, I don't want to overemphasize it. There is some inherent talent in everything, and some amazing inclination, and you become a mathematician, and it's only for the very special few.
Right.
So I think. If I had to order, I would say that I think the most important thing has to do with maybe your teachers at primary schools or high school, maybe your family, maybe your experience. I think these are very formative years, and it's very easy to, feel intimidated. And I think this is also cultivated by society. So the moment you feel intimidated or something wrong, if also your family. Everyone else in society kind of rationalizes this and says, mathematics are hard and it's only for, we don't need them, somehow it becomes the norm.
Right.
But this happens in other things if you think about it. It's also in politics, it's also in many things. So I think different people have different perspectives, so I don't want to say everyone likes mathematics for the same reasons, because I'm pretty sure people like mathematics for different reasons.
Definitely,
yeah. Some people are very competitive, for example. They like mathematics because they give them this sense of fulfillment that I can do this that other people cannot do, or they like mathematical tests, Olympiads, and this stuff. Other people, for example, like me, I think this is a bit sad because maybe that's not the best reason, but I think I really appreciate like the beauty of mathematics in the sense like writing and proof properly, So for example, I don't get a lot of happiness from just having proved something, or if someone told me, but I need to understand it and write it down properly,
Yeah.
But maybe this is an old school approach, right? I mean, what does it matter, if it's there, if it's true, but I really appreciate it. So it's more like of the aesthetics part of the thing, right? Of this beauty. Other people maybe like, the power it has to explain practical things, the practicality of it, as a means to do, physics, finance, or something. But in general, I agree that we have an issue in society about how we communicate, but on the other hand, I don't want to set it and be like, our goal is to open this to as many people as possible. I think there is, we don't need more regulation and more things about what we should do. Somehow we should have good teachers. We should give the opportunity for people to do what they like. But we need to empower them and give them the tools to. People should do mathematics if they like, but all of them should have the chance to really know what is it, right? Yeah. So this is my general. I mean, I don't know how feasible it is, but I would say that if you randomly choose many primary school teachers or something, I think they would probably hate mathematics themselves. And this is unavoidable. You cannot do mathematics. You cannot inspire mathematics if you're struggling yourself.
Yeah.
Even if you pretend, I don't think this is.
Do you think people should be given more of a chance to find what it is about maths they like? Because I think I was very lucky in that I realised what pure mathematics was when I started uni. I didn't really have a conception of it in high school, but then I found this in uni. I really latched onto it. So I think giving people that chance to explore. Do you think that's important? Yeah,
I think, and again, this has to come from a personal level. I think that there needs to be a curriculum somehow, but there needs to be, I don't know if it's a math club or something. These structures are a little bit elitist, which again, I don't have a problem with elitist structures. Somehow they serve their purpose, and we should not penalize everything. It's fine. I mean, not everything needs to have a heavy social meaning behind it. But yeah, somehow, when if someone wants to ask something and see something, we need to have the teacher who is capable of communicating this. First of all, identifying the need to the other person. And then maybe say something that give them. But it's very hard to do that in the curriculum.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I think if I ask almost everyone who somehow has a connection with mathematics, they will probably share an experience, something that excited them, they make them feel that there is some truth there, some beauty that they saw that you cannot find otherwise, and somehow this intrigued them.
Do you remember the first time you were kind of blown away by something in maths?
So I remember I liked maths, but like blown away in the sense that because I have to be so. Yeah, so I remember. So I don't know how it is in other countries. So in Greece we did a lot of geometry because the history. So I remember. I don't know if you have done these things like how you bisect an angle or how you trisect an angle, but only with a straight line and a compass.
Absolutely.
So this thing that it's not probable. You cannot trisect an angle or just by. So I remember that we learned 12 something like at the beginning of junior high school or something, middle school, high school. How we bisect an angle. That, and this was. I remember that I was sitting and I was bisecting angles all the time at my desk. I was like, how come? And then I remember at the end of the book, the teacher telling us that you cannot trisect an angle. But then I didn't, no one gave us a proof. It says that somehow it was a feeling it's hard to.
Right.
And I remember spending, like the rest of the year always trying to do experiments about how this is not possible. And then I remember when I saw the proof, which I don't remember the proof, but I remember I saw it in algebra at the university, like Field's theory or like Galois theory or something. You can do a formal proof of this.
Right.
It was so unrelated, and why this comes from algebra, and this was. But I remember this was one of the things in the university that was blown away with the connection of this. Other things I remember, again, but in my high school, because I'm going back, because these are usually the things that, and this was at the back of the book, I remember. That there was some extra material in the high school in Greece that it was not taught, but like the proof that square root of 2 is irrational.
Yeah, that's a classic.
How primes are infinite.
Yeah.
And you could do this in Greece because for example it was in Euclid's Elements, the original proof. Even the fact that this proof was, so I don't know if you've read the actual Euclid the Elements.
Yeah.
Because back then they didn't have algebra. So if you read the original book in Greek, everything was done in language, something seems simple, all this needs to be explained. So the fact that you could take this in Greek and you could read it, because ancient Greek, they're pretty similar to modern, they're not the same, but you can, so the fact that you could read this was amazing. You could do number theory, because so I remember this was, and somehow this sense of like proving things, this I remember being obsessed about writing properly the proofs and proving things. I think, but on the other hand, something that maybe it's interesting for your viewers, and I don't want to say that everything is nice, but I think something that I think it's a disadvantage for me, and I think I'm in the huge minority. And maybe I should not have become a mathematician because of this. Is that I don't really, I don't appreciate the competitive aspect of mathematics. So I was never in these, teams, about like the national competition and then the Olympiads and stuff. And I don't want to dismiss it because usually, very good students that I get there. But, I tried a couple of times because I was a good student, so somehow the natural thing was to go. But I was bored. I don't imply that I was, better or like for some reason I didn't see, I like doing. They were valuing different things than I was valuing, right? It was like who is clever, who is fast, a lot of memorization of the techniques. And it's the same way, and another thing that maybe makes me the minority is that, my father would teach me chess, when I was, but I never really liked it. I remember how to do it, but I didn't like it, and I didn't see, that much the beauty of, in it. It seemed to me like a memorization, somehow. And like board games, And I'm really jealous. For example, I go to conferences and everyone talks about, it's a very common thing in mathematics. The good departments, they would have, nights that they would do board games.
Right.
It's like if usually my experience is that I go in a board game and I'm so bored that I try to lose in the first 5 minutes.
Right,
I do like random moves.
Uh-huh.
So and also not only in the departments, but in my personal life, like in my family, people would like to play board game. So I don't know what it is, I don't, or like riddles. I don't like.
Yeah.
Someone would say, proving a theorem is a riddle, but for me it's like, I don't like this artificial cleverness. Somehow there is a catch. Let's be clever, but in a not systematic way.
Yeah.
Somehow I don't appreciate this. It's. I always, I want to go to a student and say, look, it's not everything is a matter if you are very clever or like sneaky or something. Somehow hard work and makes. So I don't want to, But all this makes me the minority. Maybe this was an indication that I should not be doing this job. But it's late.
Well, has there been a board game that's kind of interested you from a game theory perspective?
There are some games that famously, game theorists would play, right? Go or like some other stuff. Somehow I feel that if I'm going to invest it, so it needs to be fun, okay? That's why we do it. But I have a different definition of fun. So if life is too short, so if I'm going to invest the time into this, the way I see it is that people invest a lot of time because somehow they want to win.
Right.
I really don't get a lot of happiness by winning. I really, I don't care. But I know that many people in academia like this, the winning, and I have discussed this extensively. So if I'm to invest this time, I can invest it by actually reading something that I want, mathematics, or trying to prove something.
Yeah.
Or I should do something totally different, which is really fun for me, right? So I don't get this. But I'm not implying anything, right? I know people like it, and they're probably way more clever than me. But I'm not just. It was never, and I know, I don't have an explanation.
Yeah.
Honestly, maybe I should not have. Yeah.
No, I mean that's fair enough. Has game theory kind of bled into your daily life generally? Do you think about things in like a socially optimal way, or?
I think I don't do it in a very, very advanced way.
Yeah.
I think it helped me, both game theory and theoretical computer science and algorithms. For example, something that we do a lot in theoretical computer science is lower bounds, upper bounds, corner cases, and I think you think a lot in this way if you are, somehow you try to approach something about, what is a corner case, what could go wrong here, what is the problem, and then try to build from there. So, this way, upper and lower bounds, somehow you approach. And game theory, not really in a sense like, I would model something as a game, but, the basic principles that, what is the utility of, so what is everyone trying to optimize? I think it's a fundamental thing, and I think we miss this point. I don't think we should over rationalize everything, and not everything is measurable, but when you go in a situation you try to, for example, we discussed about academia, right? We design a policy, okay? So now we need to think, what are we really trying to do here? And are we achieving this goal? Because many times you would be surprised that we don't know what we're doing, so how are we going to optimize this? And many times we're trying to optimize something that feels that we're doing, but we're not. So we feel many times, okay, we want to optimize the student experience, but maybe what we're doing is we want to simplify our process internally, right? And it's not the same. So I think this has, helped me a lot. No, actually, I don't know if it has helped me, because sometimes your life becomes, if you're an academic, and especially in this kind of work, you will constantly find more difficult to interact with people who are not, don't think in this way. And this is a problem, I guess, with all mathematicians. Somehow you need to, how you speak and how you make an argument. There are many cases that people will not understand how you make an argument, although you really try to make a very simple argument, and you try to really make it robust, but what is common sense and what is a common argument for, the average person, it might be totally different to how you do it, and this can create a lot of issues. So, for example, imagine being a mainstream politician and being a mathematician. I don't know if they exist, maybe some of them, but this would be a serious problem. Although someone could say that all laws that are passed, they should be vetted by mathematicians. Yeah,
that's an interesting intersection, I feel.
Because technically, they're like laws, okay? So I'm pretty sure if you give, to logicians or mathematicians laws that are passed, they will find you syntactical errors, inconsistencies.
And there's a famous example of I'm forgetting who it was, but some famous mathematician. He was studying for like his American residency test, and he found a loophole in the Declaration of Independence.
Oh yeah, no, Gödel.
And that would allow for dictatorship to be established. So yeah, I mean, absolutely, I think it's a pretty interesting.
So
checking.
But yeah, I don't think many people would tell you that game theory model real life and stuff. I don't think, and I say this to my course, I don't think it's a good starting point. I mean, economists would say this and it's a good selling point, and you can say this, but I think we need to appreciate more the mathematical discipline, and I think this should come first.
Yeah.
And it's the same with physics, and everything has its purpose, but you need to make assumptions, but somehow I feel that, something makes sense mathematically and you cannot explain it. It's like a theory is beautiful mathematically, and somehow there is urgency into creating this theory, even in a mathematical sense. It doesn't have to, intuition is good, motivation is good, but somehow game theory is elegant because it's game theory in the way it was created. I don't think it's only what is it trying to model. That's why, again, philosophy, right? I don't think I'm a Platonist in this way that somehow there's an ultimate truth and the object exists and we find them in a way. I believe a lot in the humanistic aspects of mathematical experience. So I think formalism is important. I think that the way we create mathematics, we have freedom, and this, to a certain sense, dictates what we prove from this. I don't think there is. But on the other hand, human experience and intuition comes into these notions. So, I mean, even if something explains something amazingly well, what does it mean? It means that in all your experiments, probably it explains something. But this doesn't make it, a good mathematical theory, because first of all, there might be a point that it fully disagrees. Secondly, you cannot do mathematics with it.
Yeah.
So, mathematics sometimes is also, it's a science, of course, but not in the sense of a natural science that you have to do experiments to validate something that exists in the natural world.
Yeah.
But it's also a form of art to some extent, because you create something, this something is beautiful in a way, it can be appreciated, but then the logic of it makes a science, okay? So, I cannot explain it, but this is the reason that I'm doing mathematics, and maybe, it's all cool and boring, and maybe these things become more and more obsolete. But I think many people appreciate these things in mathematics.
I think mathematics is an inherently creative process.
That's good that you say this.
That's why I quite find it enjoyable.
Not many people will say, but I'm good at you. So in that sense, I like game theory because of this and because of the tools that it connects many things. I can do optimization, I can do algorithms, and there's a center, clean, beauty of it, and then you can expand it. It can become more complicated. But I wouldn't say that it necessarily models human behavior, whatever. It could, but we can appreciate it.
Do you think there's some like grand unified theory of mathematics that could like model the universe, some sort of like fantastical theory?
I don't know. I'm a little bit, so, I'm classic in that sense. So, someone could say, I don't know if Russell's Principe Mathematica, that they were trying to prove everything by basic principles and stuff, so, it's very painful, but someone could say that you can prove everything in a very systematic way from everything, and what exist means, what is existence. So, existence means something that we see with our senses. Is it something that we can talk about and understand? Is it something that we can prove? So it's a little bit. Are you constructivist? Like do you believe in non-constructive proofs? The other thing, by the way, in the philosophy, like intuitionistic logic and stuff, and so. I don't know. For me, it's I think I just want to be in this part of mathematics that I would still have the ability, and someone would give me space. And I'm not sure if this is it's not at all sure that this will happen because things are changing. That I can just do the things I like and I love and do. I still people would appreciate the proof, a nice theory, something beautiful, something that you read it. Because you will read the paper that proves something amazing and it just doesn't click with you. You can spend 1 month and you can understand, but then suddenly becomes yours, and the way you have interpreted it, you can write it in a totally different way.
Yeah, true. So
suddenly, what is really the proof here? What is the object? Is it me, the way that I understood it and I made the connections, or is it somehow does it exist and somehow someone approached it, or the fact that I cannot understand it in that way and I understood it another way makes it a different object, or it's so but at the same time I think these are things that should be experienced in the practice of mathematics, not necessarily in an abstract way, and that's the beauty of it. You need to have, it's a privilege to be able to work and be exposed to say like, oh, today I want to learn about something new. How many people can say that they go every day to the jobs and they learn something new?
Absolutely.
And this is a great risk. I mean, this is why we chose this job, and now with everything is changing, and if we take this away, it could be such a miserable life. Not for me. It's for humanity. I hope we can still do this, but I'm optimistic. I think that it's the same with art or something. I think some people somewhere will always appreciate these things that make us human, and I really believe this. I don't. Well, let's see.
Is there anything that you've wanted to research but haven't got a chance to, or can't?
Many. I mean, I have open problems that I'm interested, but I don't want to be very technical in my area now and tell you open problems. I can give you some famous open problems, but I think it's what I said. This relates. I wish I would have more time and the ability to do a little bit more the things that got me started in academia. And give more emphasis in teaching and interacting with students, either PhD students or students. This is part of the academic experience, and I think we put in less and less time into this. Being able to take a classic problem that is unsolved for 100 years and work on it, it's very high risk. No one does it anymore. But we should be doing this. So I don't have many years left, in academia, I guess, because I'm older. But I wish that until I retired, I am privileged to be able to still do. I mean, it sounds obvious, right? I mean, I'm saying something which is vacuous here. You would expect me to say something, but I'm a little bit, I'm not a fan of always, building up and introducing new models and new complexity. I think there are beautiful things that are there, but they're just hard, and we don't work on them anymore, and we don't appreciate them anymore. Look, there are always people who just define new models, super complicated stuff, and and especially now with AI, and they will. Fine, these people will exist, and they can do that, and I'm very proud of them, and I'm excited about this. But I think there should be also people who really push the frontier of what we can, do in a more fundamental, and I just hope. I can give you precise problems, but I think this is what I want to communicate, is that, it is okay to just, work on the things that, that you like, and you don't have to always, because usually someone dictates what is current and what is urgent, and especially in modern academia, there's a lot, I don't know if you're exposed to these things, but there's a huge issue about research grants and funding. So how you get funded, it's a whole process about how you write your proposals, and there are things that are popular and you need to write about these things. But this is, I don't know, because technically humanity is more and more educated and clever, and I really believe that the average person now is way more educated and perhaps even more way more clever than a scientist 300 years ago.
Definitely.
So it's amazing that although that's the case, we cannot really appreciate what we do as humans and what is the purpose of the human experience and learning and pushing the frontier.
Yeah.
It's like usually someone dictates to us what is kind, what we should do. We hear about this, we need to be doing this. This is, but why? And if you see the number theory and whatever, the classic number theorems or Fermat, all these people who knew that all these things would be used in modern cryptography or like in quantum computing and all this, So I'm not saying that what we do now in game theory would be used in such fundamental ways, but it's the concept that somehow people back then, it was totally okay to do this, and now this would be unimaginable.
Yeah, true.
I mean, you would say to me, there are people who do number theory. They are, very few, and number theory is always special, so it gets some popularity, but no, you need to show me the analog of number theory back then now.
Yeah.
Okay. So
do you think like bureaucracy, like politics and funding, gets in the way of? Because ideally we'd be able to research exactly what we want.
Yeah. I think also it's a matter that way more people. It's not anymore such an elitist. Back then there were some people who were very rich. They have access to academia, and somehow they also had the freedom to do this, and this was appreciated.
Yeah.
Now somehow everyone, people who stay in academia, they want to be researchers, so somehow all this needs to be more organized and but I think every serious society and that needs to have a future in whatever is happening, they need to fund fundamental research. By the way, I'm not saying I'm doing fundamental research, there are other, but somehow we should, and this comes back to what I said, that when I was a student I was, giving too much emphasis, for example, okay, my sister would argue that that's not the case, and Yiannis, okay, you would always reading books and stuff, but I don't remember, reading, fiction that much, and I don't remember this. My sister would say I was reading, but I think I was finding very difficult to read, and maybe that's what I like mathematics. That, I would find it difficult and still find it to focus too much. But now I read way more. So yeah, for example, the fact that universities close down departments like classical studies and stuff, it's unimaginable to me. And I would say, okay, more money for the computer science, but I mean, okay, you could go at an LLM and ask something, everything, it has all, but this approach that the person who goes and teaches you about Odyssey now, because we have the film, right, so everyone talks about it, and it just, what is it? Is it just a machine that has read all the books and is telling you something? This is such...
very reductionist.
Of course not. He's a person who has lived this.
Yeah.
They have read this. They have experienced the moment that they... Right? And then they talk to you and they have a different character and they appreciate... And the experience. It's also the choice. The active choice that you choose to go and study this subject. The act itself. It's something powerful.
Yeah.
Right? Like you say, look, I want to do this. This immediately, it's powerful. It gives you opportunity. So I think that the very good universities and societies will always appreciate this. And it's to be admired that these people in disciplines that have way less funding, and the theoretical mathematicians, and we also theoretical scientists who don't have a lot of funding. It's like somehow they do this and they exist, and we should cherish this. And politicians usually say, oh, okay, like whatever, the Turing Institute, the UK government, we give 10 billions to AI research. Very fast, generically, let's throw it. People come, take the money. What did we really do here? What did we really learn? So, my radical view is that if you teach people how to think, you have higher chance, even in a practical manner, to do more groundbreaking work, even in these fields.
Yeah.
So funding directly very applied AI in a narrow sense, I'm not sure at all if really this creates, even in a practical sense, the strength that you need in these disciplines. I think the only way to do that is that people who think and they appreciate new things. But in order to do that, you need to give breathing space. You need to say it's okay to do this. We are not always measuring what you did, what you produced. You just need to be, an academic, whatever this means. Value the academic experience. Not only say, academic experience is good as long as it gives me a higher salary, return of investment and this. No, I mean, I get this that we do it, and also, but why? What's the problem? And the other. I mean, I don't know. This is going to backfire. For example, if you link the student loans to the return of investment and how you repay them, directly how much money you make. I don't know. Is this even in average? Is this a good strategy that is optimizing? I don't know. I would say that societies that thrive and they are advanced, they thrive through a very complicated way that no one can centralize, and somehow this makes, and it's also a matter of history, right? I mean, somehow we're destroying traditions of years and years. I get the modernization, we should not stay, but somehow we had a way that people were learning for 2,000 years.
Yeah.
So, okay, I get it, we should adapt, but should we just, a little bit think about it? Like how young children learn. Just give them, a tablet through the very young years. I mean, we had books. The reason we had books, it was not only the physical limitation, it was also the process. So if we are radical and we destroy this process, let's think about it a little bit more. What are the implications? Yeah. But anyway, I'm not an expert in these things, so I'm not implying. This is my personal view.
Okay, I think that's a pretty good note to end it on. The last question I have for you. So the podcast is called Numbers Aren't Real, because I think the concept of a number is pretty loose. So what episode or what number would you like this episode to be? Is there like a significant number that you have? And again, number is a loose thing.
I would say 17, but I don't know why.
17 for no.
It's random enough, is it? I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know why. It's the first.
Cool. Happy with 17. All right. Yeah. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you for having me. I really enjoyed our discussion.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thanks.